Hi, I'm Marsha from the Monroe County Library System, and today I'm going to talk about biographies. You can find these biographies on any of our downloadable content, or in the library we have an entire biography section, and there will be stickers with little heads on the sides of them, so they're easy to find. So I'm just going to go through a few. I've got a few more displayed, and if there's any that you like, you can pick your own topic. So the first one I'm going to start with is Stephen King. He wrote a book called On Writing. And it's no secret that I'm a Stephen King fan. I love all of his works and all of his horror. In this book, this is the story of how he came to be, and his inspiration for writing Carrie was with a conversation of a janitor at the school. And when he got the phone call that Carrie actually was picked up, he said he was on the phone and looked around his apartment and thought things were going to change, bought a blender. This book is just great. It's a great look into his life, how he lived, how he feels inspired, what he writes about. Another thing about Stephen King I love is both his wife Tabitha King writes horror books, and his son Joe Hill also writes horror books such as Horns and other titles as well. So they're all great, and they're great with horror. I just want to spend one Halloween with the King family. So give me a call. Hole in My Life by Jack Gantos. This is another great book. Jack Gantos I love. He writes Dead End in Norville. He has a lot of great books. So you might know Jack Gantos as writing the juvenile fiction books. But what you don't know is the story behind Jack Gantos and his life that was really kind of a shock. He was lived and he was smuggling drugs actually, and he ended up going to jail. It's really kind of a shock, and it's not for the weak stomach, but it's very good, and it's crazy when you know the books he writes and you know him from speaking and from interviews. This is another great biography. Mockingbird is great. This is a story into the portrait of Harper Lee, who wrote To Kill a Mockingbird, Ghost at a Watchman. I liked her backstory as well. She recently passed, but it was great to read about her and some of her inspiration for her novels. Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt. I think this might have been made into a movie. Very heart-wrenching, poor story of growing up in Ireland. They're very poor. It's very like an overcoming and inspiring kind of a book. I have some fun ones in here too. I love to read books about pop culture as well. This is Tiffany Haddish, The Last Black Unicorn. Very funny. I recommend when you're reading these books written by the author, especially fun performing authors like this, you listen to them instead of reading them. I love their dialect. They have little side stories that are not included in the pages, and they're very fun and funny. So if you like Tiffany Haddish, Kevin Hart's is very funny. I just like books by comedians that way. I have a few more over here too. Marley and Me, I think that's pretty a common one, a great kind of story about a dog and his life and the trials. Again, this one was made into a movie, but if you like books like Marley and Me, or stories like that where you kind of grow up the life of a dog and the companionship that they give, there's a lot of really good ones. This one's called Weekends with Daisy. There's a lot of great like dog companion books, and they're also amazing to read and very fun and uplifting. Prairie Fires, this is a good one. This is the American Dreams of Laura Ingalls Wilder. I'm a big Little House on the Prairie fan, from reading the books when I was young to watching the show. I just feel as if I grew up on it, so this kind of continues that story on. It's some of the things that you're familiar with, but it does kind of continue the story. And the other thing I really like about that series was that most of the characters from Little House on the Prairie, such as Melissa Gilbert or Allison Arngrim that played Nellie, and Melissa Sue Anderson, they all wrote their own biographies and their own stories about filming that show. So I found these fascinating because they're filled with pictures and behind the scenes stories. So if you are a fan of Little House on the Prairie, you should read their biographies. Interesting fact, Melissa Gilbert, who played Half Pint, Laura Ingalls Wilder, she actually had braces during filming, so they would take the braces off every morning and put them on every night of filming. That was just one little interesting thing. So if you want to learn more and you want to read some of their biographies, those are great ones to read. By Chance Alone, this is a wonderful one. This is a fairly new one by Max Eisen. New book, old story. He is a Holocaust survivor, and this book, I could not put it down, but it was so hard to get through. The only thing that kept me reading was that I knew he lived to tell this story, because there were so many times in the story where I thought, oh, this is where he dies. And then I remember he doesn't, but it is traumatic. This book is traumatic from losing basically his whole family, his whole life, getting uprooted, and his stay there in the concentration camps and the death camps, working in the trenches. And it's the title, By Chance Alone, the chances that save him and what he thinks of as a chance and I think of as trauma. After I read books like this, I think I'm never going to complain again, but then I usually forget and complain again. But you definitely need to read By Chance Alone. Again, with pop culture, Anna Kendrick wrote Scrappy Little Nobody. This one's very fun. I listened to her read it. It's great. The title, Scrappy Little Nobody, is something her brother called her. It's a fun nickname. Again, she gives really good behind-the-scenes stories of things that went on in some of the movies she filmed and how she never really feels like a star compared to the people that she's with. It's very, very fun, very light, very humble, and entertaining as well. Neil Patrick Harris, I like anything by him. I think he's very funny. This one's called Choose Your Own Autobiography. It's very clever, very funny. It talks about his stories through his, from his start with Doogie Howser, and then it goes into his magic and his podcast, and he does so much, and he's very, very entertaining as well. The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. This is a great controversial story. Also, it was made into a movie. This is the story about a woman's cells that were taken kind of against their knowing it and tested, and the family coming out and finding these things later and doing research into this. And it's very just fascinating. The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks is fascinating. I did post some books on Kobe Bryant and other sports figures too, just for a variety of biographies. With Kobe Bryant recently passing, his stories were really good, and it was really great to read the stories that he wrote and tales that he told before that. He also writes a juvenile fiction series, the Wisnard series, which is great. So that's another good one. Heaven is for Real. That's another great, inspiring, uplifting story about a little boy who has a near-death experience and comes back and tells all these things that he had seen. So yeah, this is a really nice, uplifting one as well. The Magnolia Story and Capital Gains by Chip and Joanna Gaines. They both wrote biographies too, so if you're a fan of that show, this gives a little look into their life and how they met and came to be. Let's see, what else do I have here? Becoming by Michelle Obama. This book is very inspiring, very uplifting. It tells the story of becoming, how she became to be. It talks about prior to even like when she was in law school and, even just growing up. It was a great look into her life and her history and then her becoming. It's very in-depth insight, personal look into her life. There are more here this one is great too, before I forget. There's one called Still Alice that I also liked, which is about Alzheimer's. And this one is similar too. Before I forget is that it's a tale of, she has onset of Alzheimer's. It's very heartbreaking, but it just shows them sticking together and them trying to get through that together as well. Some of these were also made into movies, so I'm just going to go through a couple of them. I don't want to only talk about ones that you can see the movies for too, but Wild is very great. It's her walk and her path through she just goes on this hike and a journey of self-discovery. It's very great. Hidden Figures is awesome. This is a wonderful book about the women behind NASA and how they were really not credited or given credit and all the hard work that they did coming up. I have another great book on women of science. This is a new nonfiction book that we got, a new biography nonfiction. It includes multiple women in the field of science. And I really enjoyed this one because I do not love science that way. So for me, it's very interesting. I love the stories of like Radium Girls, where they, I just love any story about that because it's not something that I love. So when I read about it, I feel extra impressed by anyone with those kind of backgrounds. This one is a book on Tom Brady. It's very kind of light and fun back from his earlier days. This is still from the NFL, but it does talk a little bit about when he played with Michigan and some of the stuff there. Along those same lines, I have a book by his wife, Giselle. I kind of became obsessed with the 73 Questions by Vogue, and there's a fun one of her and Tom Brady's in the background making cameos, swinging a golf club and things like that. So biographies really on anyone and any topic. It can be women of science, it can be sports figures, As you can see, I have a lot more here. There's so many to choose from. You just need to find a biography about a topic or a person that you love and read about it and learn more about them. Thank you.